Howdy, gang, and welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host here at the Gaming Gang channel. Thanks for joining me once again. Today, I am going to share a first look and a page through of the Castles and Crusades Player's Handbook 20th Anniversary Reprint Edition from Trollord Games. This is written by Davis Chenault and Matt Golden, and this anniversary reprint edition carries an MSRP of $34.99. It is available in very limited quantities. I will talk about that in just a few moments. But having said all that, let's swing on over to the other camera because here I've got the Castles and Crusades Player's Handbook 20th Anniversary Reprint Edition. Do want to mention my friends over at Trollord Games were kind enough to provide me with this copy. Neither I nor anyone else affiliated with the Gaming Gang has received any other sort of compensation for me to share this coverage with you. These days, it's important you know that. So I should also point out that I'm not doing a review of this book because the reality is I've already reviewed the Player's Handbook, or at least the current printing of the Player's Handbook for Castles and Crusades. This is more of a collector's item because this is a reprint of the Player's Handbook for Castles and Crusades that came out in 2004. So I wanted you to get an opportunity to take a peek at this because I know, at least here on the Gaming Gang, there are quite a few people who really enjoy Castles and Crusades. I've generated some interest with other folks about Castles and Crusades, which we'll talk a little bit as I flip on through this book. But you might be interested in checking this out and adding this to your collection as a collector's item, not necessarily as a core book to utilize to run Castles and Crusades. But funny enough, if you wanted to, you could, because mechanically the game hasn't changed. There have been some tweaks between some of the print runs, not huge amounts. I honestly have to say that the big change is going to be with the new Reforged edition, which is hopefully going to arrive before the holiday season later this year. Fingers crossed. But even that edition, mechanically, things are the same. So the reality is you could easily run this with this edition of the Player's Handbook. So this is signed by Davis Chenault, as well as Stephen Chenault and Matt Golden. So that's a nice little addition here. So we're just going to flip on through this a little bit. I'm not going to page through the entire book. You're not going to see each and every page, but I do want to give you a good look inside. See if this might be something that you want to put on your shelf in a place of honor. So as I had mentioned previously, Castles and Crusades hasn't really changed mechanically since its release in 2004. Now, I hear from some people who have pointed out to me, because I talk about Castles and Crusades a good amount, I would say it's one of the fantasy role-playing games I refer to fairly often with the live streams. And they point out to me, well, there's all these other old school revival games out there, and Castles and Crusades just kind of does the same thing they do. Well, the reality is Castles and Crusades came out before the old school revival began. And this is not necessarily a retro clone of OD&D, AD&D. I say it all the time. If someone's looking for an old school styled fantasy role playing game with more modern mechanics, which is also very modular, they really should take a look at Castles and Crusades. Plus, there's loads of content for it, and it's very, very easy to port over older Dungeons and Dragons modules and adventures, third-party OSR releases. Super, super easy to do that. And you can do it on the fly. It's not like you have to sit there and calculate everything out from an adventure. That's pretty sweet, especially, like I said, if you want to be running some of the older classic fantasy adventures out there and do it with far more modern mechanics. Something I always get a kick out of is looking through older role playing game books and just seeing how the presentation has evolved over the years. Of course, we still have our two-column format here, but even taking a look at the older AD&D books, it does share similarities to it, but also a little bit different as well. So I thought that's kind of cool. You'll also notice that even though we do see some artwork, there's not a ton of artwork. Of course, I'm sure I'm flipping past a good amount of art too, but this is not a rule book where you would have every single page need to include a piece of artwork. So even though this would clock in at about 124 pages, if I remember correctly, you are looking at a lot of content inside this book, which is one of the cool things about Castles and Crusades is you will get a lot of gaming for your dollar. In fact, if you're not aware of this, you can still get the Player's Handbook. I want to say it's the 9th print run for Castles and Crusades in PDF, absolutely free. Now, if you followed the Gaming Gang, you know I mentioned from time to time, you really only need 2 books to be able to run Castles and Crusades as a castle keeper, which is the term for the game master. Truth is, and I just interviewed Stephen Chenault this past weekend at Gamehole Con, you really only need this. If you have an OSR style bestiary, monster manual, what have you, you can easily use those for your monsters and use the handbook for the players as your core rules. So that's something I think is very cool. It's very generous of Troll Lord Games to provide the PDF of the core book absolutely free. You can get on board and you can start playing without paying a dime. I think that's pretty sweet. So, as far as this 20th anniversary reprint edition, there were 2,000 copies printed. And as of this past weekend at Gamehole Con, there are fewer than 300 which remain. So, if you are interested in kind of enjoying a reprint of history of our hobby and a pretty cool book in itself, you might want to act fast. There are fewer than 300 copies still available. All right, so that's just a peek inside the Player's Handbook for Castles and Crusades, the 20th anniversary reprint edition. As I mentioned, once again, I'm not going to be sharing a review of the book because I already reviewed the most recent print run of the Player's Handbook, as well as the Castle Keeper's Guide and the Monsters and Treasures book for Castles and Crusades. And of course, once again, fingers crossed, by the end of the year, I will have reviews of the Reforged edition of books too. But I did want to share a peek inside the reprint edition. All right, that is it for this time out. If you liked the video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't already. And if you do subscribe, don't forget, ring that bell because it'll not only let you know when I share videos such as this first look, it'll also inform you when my live stream, the Gaming Gang Dispatch, airs Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday evenings right here on YouTube at 7 p.m. Central. And of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit gaminggang.com for all latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more you are not going to find here on YouTube. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. Thank you very much for watching. Once again, I'm Jeff McAleer. And until I see you again, certainly hope all of you get to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang.